Hi, I'm Allie. Join me as I show you how to do this Night in the Cathedral pendant and chain. It is going to be a subscription box project for our December subscription box. So if you want the box, go ahead and look below the video in the description. We'll put links there to all the materials, and you can always subscribe as well. Gather them all up and let's get ready to get started. So to begin, we're starting out with two simple seed beads, 11 O's and 8 O seed beads. We're going to be creating a bezel for the back of this square crystal, and I've been loving these square crystals because there's something really cool about the cut and the way that they shine that's different from a Rivoli and just gives a different look. We're going to do a netted bezel, and we are going to be using size 6 dragon thread, and I have a size 11 needle on here. I want you to simply pick up a collection of 6 of your 11O seed beads, followed by 1 of your 8O seed beads. And you're going to do this a total of 4 times, doing that 6 11s followed by 1 8. Once you have all of those, we're going to drop them down to the base of the thread and simply tie it into a knot. So tying this thread end then into the knot after the rotation of that grouping of 4, I'm just going to tie it into the knot and tie a second knot here to do that little square knot. Give a nice tight pull on the end, which will make that nice and tight. Take your thread and needle through the next line of seed beads and out prior to the 8O seed bead. When we're out prior to the 8O seed bead, we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did. So we're going to use a total of 6 of my 11O seed beads, then 1 8O seed bead, and then 6 more 11O seed beads. And once we have those on, I want you to sew back through the 6 seed beads that your thread is currently coming out of. So make sure you go through all 6 of those. What that's going to do is create basically 4 little flaps or petals that will be on the design. So through the next 8O seed bead, the silver in the original little square that we did, and come out again after the next 6 beads. From here, add 6 11s followed by 1 8, 6 more 11s, and then again back through those 6 11O seed beads and keep making until we have a collection of 4 of these little petals coming off our original square. After completing your last loop, you are going to go into that next 8O seed bead in line, go through all of those 6 seed beads from the initial row of seed beads, pop out prior to the next 8O seed bead, and we are going to step up into that first little loop that we did. So we're going to go through those 6 11O seed beads, and I want you then to exit out through the 8O seed bead. When we exit out through the 8O seed bead, we're going to get ready to create our bezel to fit our 18 millimeter square cushion bead in. Right now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going from smaller bead to bigger bead, basically, creating the sides of the piece. That's going to be our second rotation. Our first rotation, we're going to do the interior. So the interior, we're going to connect to all of those corner 8O seed beads here. And to do so and to connect them in the corners, you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 seed beads with an 8O. So you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 seed beads, 8O, 1, 2, 3, 4 seed beads onto the next corner or the next top of that next petal. As you're building it, it's going to start to close it up. And as you start to close it up, you're going to feel the need at the very end to get ready to put your square in there. From there then, after doing all of our sides, it's going to create that nice little nested bezel. So now you can see we have this perfect little pocket that we've created. And what I did was, after creating those groups of 4 1 4 on all 4 of my sides, I went back through that original 4 1 4 grouping. I'm going to slide my crystal in, sitting that the points are on the original sides of my beads. I'm going to give a nice tight pull. What we're going to do now is go around all of the beads here that we just added, those groups of 4 seed beads, 1 8, 4 more 11s, and you're going to bring your thread and needle out. Now you can see I skipped over that corner 8O. Why did I do that? Because that's what's going to pull that into a nice tight square shape. So you're at the next side then, go through here. We're tightening up this portion here. Going through, back through those 9 beads total. Pull in nice and tight, skipping over that corner bead. Right through there and over to the next. Now, I was originally coming out of this side. Anytime you go through and kind of close off and finish up a section like this, I always like, and as soon as I went through that side, you can see how it really kind of tightened it up. I always like to go back through my original first side again, just to make that really closed up and final. You can see the crystal's not coming out. There's still a little bit of movement in there. Don't worry about it. And now what I want to do is come out through that corner 8 OC bead that we didn't sew through the last time around. From here, we're going to add some crystals on the exterior line that sit right along this side here. And we're going to basically go smallest to biggest. I have some 2mm bicones here, as well as some 2mm rounds. So we're going to go 11, 8, then we're going to go for our bicone, and then we're going to go for our round. We're then going to do the same beads backwards. Bicone, then an 8, then an 11. We're going to go down into our next corner and go through the corner bead 8O seed bead. See how that just decorates the side? You're going to do this 4 total times, going into the 11, the 8, the bicone, the round, back to the bicone, back to the 8, back to the 11, into that next corner. 2 more to go. 11, 8, going through here and around to the corner. So I have 1 more side to do, going in, and this also pulls your little square cushion bead in place a little bit tighter. Going again from smaller to bigger. If you have different beads at home, use different beads. That's a nice thing of this design, that you can really change it up. Now see, again, like I said, I love to go back through the first grouping that you just did on this side, going back through my 11s and coming out through that second 8 OC bead. That gets our first square section here. And now we're going to continue going through and adding more. To add more and to get kind of more of that squared look, I want you to go in here and we're going to add an extra 11 OC bead as we go along the sides, and also go in and go around the corner, adding in an extra little crystal bead there. Coming out the rows that you did along the side, so you're going to look like you have 3 8-0s in all the corners. This is the end of that row from the top. That's your corner bead, and that's going to be the first bead along the side. I want you to come out through the end of that row that we just did, the 11, 8, crystal, 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 8, 11. Come out the 11 before the 8-0 seed bead. Add onto your threaded needle, 11, bicone, 11. Skip over that next 8-0 seed bead and go through that next line of beads that you added. Give a nice tight pull, tightening it up, and that should sit right on the outside, almost right on top of that 8-0 below it. 11, bicone, 11, skip over the 8 that's already there, and go into your next rotation of your seed beads along the line. Once again, give a nice tight pull, tighten that up. So I've got 2 on there. I've got 2 more to go as I add in all the corner beads. So after you've gone through and down the lines here, you're coming out that second line that you started with, because remember, I always go back an extra one, and I'm coming out the 8-0 seed bead along that line. And what I want to do is make the corner a little bit more squared and then tighten this up a tiny bit more. And don't worry, we're going to tighten up the back as well too. So I'm putting on an 11-0 right after coming out of one of those lines of 8s. And then I'm going into the, skipping the 11 that's right after it and going into the 11-0 that I added there, into the bicone, into the next 11-0 on the corner, just the first one, and then into adding another 11-0, and then down through the 8 crystal 8, and out after the 8 crystal 8 grouping. You can see that just kind of really fills that corner in. From here, add an 11, go through the 11 prior to the bicone, go through the bicone, through the 11 after the bicone, add an 11, go through the next 8 crystal grouping 8 and out. Your needle is naturally going to want to come through the 11 after that 8-0. You want to make sure that you're not, because what this is doing is stabilizing it, and you're adding an 8-0 that fills in that little space there. Or sorry, 11-0. Going through then, adding an 11, and going through those corner beads that you just added, the 11, crystal 11. After coming out the 11, grab another 11, and once again, go through the 8, crystal 8 rotation and out. Give a nice tight pull. And you can see here, it wanted to go through that 11-0. I don't want it to go through that 11-0. So I'm just going to backtrack, taking my needle and thread back out through that 11, adding another 11, and stepping up through those corner beads. Down through that bead after. Adding in 1 extra bead. It's almost like a peyote stitch. It fits in there pretty perfectly. And then straight across to the other side. And then finishing this row here, you can see it just kind of went straight through. When you finish then, you can see how much it's already tightened up those corners, just making it a nice squared shape. Yes, there is still a little bit of wiggle. Remember how we went around the back here and kind of pulled it back just a little bit by skipping over the 8s? That is going to be one of our final steps as we get through the project. We're naturally going to start to pull the project down a little bit because we are going to go in now and we are going to add some fringe along that lower level. So adding some fringe along the lower level, we're coming out of our crystal there on the side. So I'm coming out one of my side crystals here, and we're going to do our first fringe. It's going to be 1 11-0 seed bead, followed by 1 of your 8-0 seed beads, followed by 1, 2, and 3 more 11s, followed by 1 more 8, and then 5 of your 11s. After the 5 11s, you're going to do an 8-0 seed bead, 1 of the crystal round beads, and then I have some of these fun little rondelle saucers that are a Potomac exclusive that I'm going to be using just to add a little bit more of that blue bead down there. And need to get another one of my bicones out. And then I'm going to show you how the fringe is going to be consistent throughout the piece. So after that, we do a bicone, another 11-0 seed bead, and then we're going to go back up through the fringe. So going back up through the fringe, I want you to skip over the 11, go back up through the line of seed beads and the crystals there, and the whole way up and out through the 11-0 seed bead that's after. When you do fringe, you want to make sure not to have any extra thread showing right there. So the way to avoid that is to go down to the bottom, push your beads up, that stop bead, kind of let it go and pull it nice and tight there. From here, we're going to sew over through the next 11-0 seed bead here, after and out. Now, our pattern consistency is going to be that we are always going to have 3 seed beads between an 8 and then 5 seed beads between an 8 and then our same bottom. From here, we're going to go along adding in the fringe coming out between some different beads, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. But we're going to increase. So from 1 to 3 to 5 to 6 and then to 8 and then going back up. What that does is that creates a little bit of a V pattern going longer as we get to the middle. From here, coming out of the 11-0 after the bicone, I want you to also go through the 11-0 that sits next to the 8, and that's where we're going to start our next grouping, our fringe. The next grouping of fringe is going to be the exact same, but instead of 1 bead, I'm going to have you do 3 beads to start. 3 beads start, and then 8, 3 more beads, and an 8, 5 more beads, an 8, and then crystal round, rondelle, bicone, and 11. Let that all drop down. And now back up through, skipping over the 11-0 seed bead, which is going to hold it and anchor that fringe. Going up then through all those beads, which is easier said than done as your fringe gets a little bit longer. Pulling that in, and then once again, letting it drop down to the project, holding that stop bead, and pulling that extra thread. And that gets that in there nice and tight. From here, I'm going to sew through the 8-0. And now for the rest of the remaining rows, I'm going to circle around. So when I come out through my next fringe, adding on 5 beads here, I'm coming out of the 8-0. When I get back up to the top, I'm going to circle and go through the right side of the 8-0 and back out towards the left. When I get to the next crystal, I'm going to do the same thing. And then when I get to the middle, we're going to create a little bit of a Y. So increasing each of my lines by 2, going from 1, 3, 5, 7, and now to 9, I'm actually going to bring my thread and needle out before that first bead in that first grouping of 9. And I'm going to add another bead. So I'm coming out of that center crystal. I've added my beads here. I'm coming out the back after going down through the bead here and coming back out the top, and I'm adding another bead. What that's going to do, just because this bead is a little bit wider, being the round bead, is give me the opportunity to have this line of fringe be centered. So see how that just kind of sits in that Y section right there in the middle. From here, go ahead and downgrade, making the fringe the exact same from one side to the other. As you finish up your fringe, what we're going to do is come to the top of the piece now, and we're going to add a little bit of basically a little topper so it looks like that nice little window or more look. And then we're going to make a loop along the back here with our 8-0s and some 11-0s for our necklace to slide right through, which you can wear the necklace as just a pretty little necklace, or you can string it right through the pendant as well too. So we're going to work our thread back up, and we're going to come out right after the 8-0 here. We're going to add 2 11s and 8 2 11s and go back down to the next 8. So my threaded needle is currently coming out this side here after having added my last fringe. I'm going up through my beads here, right along the side, right along the edge. If you want to at this point too, you can go back and you can start to go in and kind of tighten up that middle, going through with one more pass of thread, or you can wait till the end. I'm going right up along, just kind of letting my needle do its thing. Tightening up the sides here. When it brings it out, just going to go in here, right up to that center 8-0 seed bead. So I'm wiggling my needle and thread to come out through the 11-0 there. And I'm going to get right up to this 8-0 seed bead. And when I'm up at this 8-0 seed bead, I need to get a couple more of my 11s out. We're going to do 2 11s, followed by an 8, followed by 2 more 11s. Skip over the crystals around the top and go right over to the next 8-0 seed bead and through. And once you're through that 8-0 seed bead and your needle is out, those seed beads will just sit right along the top, again, kind of decorating it up. From here, we're actually going to do a little sneaking into the bottom of the piece. We're going to circle back around and come out again right there along the top, because I want to add one more rotation of beads, which we're going to add to the top and then again connect to the back to make a nice little bail there for our cord to go through. So after coming out the 8-0 there, we're going to sneak to the back and go through the first 3 out of the 6 seed beads leading up to that back end. So we've gone through our first time there, kind of punching back there, making sure our thread's not going anywhere else. And as we go through the top here, we're going to add 1 and 2 of our 11-0 seed beads. We're going to add 1 and 2 and 3 of our 8-0 seed beads, and then 1 and 2 more 11-0 seed beads. Going to the opposite side, I want you to go back up through the 3 seed beads on the opposite side of that same Y. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Once you're through those 3 seed beads, those other beads are just going to kind of sit right there in the middle because we're creating a pocket. Go back up then into that 8-0 seed bead that sits along the front and into the first 11-0 from the two groupings of 11 and 8 that you did. We're now going to add some more seed beads here to the top. I want you to add one more 11, a crystal bicone, crystal round, crystal bicone, repeating what we did kind of on the sides here. One more 11. And then you're going to go to the opposite side here, right after that 8-0 seed bead along the top, and go through the second of the two seed beads and down once again into the 8-0 seed bead that sits right there. That's going to get a nice little topper when you spin around to the front there. And along the back then, we're going to reinforce going through those 3 seed beads leading up to the seed beads and the 8-0s that we put on the back. Sewing through those, I want you to come out that back 8-0 that sits at the top there. We're going to create a little X here, and that's again what it's going to sit through. So I'm going to add another 8, go through the middle bead, that middle round from the front, add another 8-0, go through the 8 along the back. And I'm going to reinforce that going through that line of thread, again going through all of those seed beads. 8-0 crystal. If you need your bail to be bigger or the opening to be bigger, you can always put some 11-0s on after the 8s. So that way your X sits a little bit wider. From here, come down through the 8-0s, down through the 3 that sit along the side here, or the 2 that sit along the side rather, into that side V again. And now all we're going to do is reinforce going up through the 8-0 that sits along the front, up through those crystals that you just added the last time around, going through the 11s, reinforcing through the bicone, through the round. So I'm going up through the front of the piece here. And again, this is just, we're not adding any beads, we're just going along that thread path, down through the 8. And once you're through the 8, again, bring the thread and needle towards the back of the design. And now through those 11s, I'm going to go the whole way now through those 11s down into the back of the pendant and out. What this is going to give me the opportunity to do, get that starter thread kind of out of there, is go in and tighten the back a little bit. And that's going to pull it then as your final ending through the back. So I'm going to go through all the lines of seed beads, just like we did along the front here, skipping over the 8-0 seed bead and skipping into the next line of 6 seed beads. That thread is going to come towards the center and go in front of that 8-0. Once again here, go through the next line of 6 seed beads. Push that thread up towards the center. So you can see I'm just kind of pinching it and holding it here because I want it to be in front of that 8-0 seed bead and giving a nice tight pull to tighten that up. Same thing here, skip over the 8, go through that line of 6 seed beads. And I'm going to do this 2 times. Going through the line of seed beads, skipping over the 8, just pulling it a little bit tighter in the back here. And then my last move is to simply tie off my thread end, which is awesome because you're already at the back and the thread, the original thread, is already there to tie onto. So you can see how that's pulling that in just tight enough that you're like, oh yes, nice. It is pulled in tight, and that pendant then is going to be nice and done. And I'm going to show you just how I make that simple little chain to go through the piece of jewelry. If your middle here is looking a little wonky after you tighten up the back and you want to, you can go and take one more pass of thread through that middle section. I did that on this one here, just to square it off and pull it a little bit tighter. After you finish with your pendant, a nice way to display it other than just on a silver necklace is to actually create a beaded necklace. And I'm keeping this really simple, only doing the blue colors and putting it on a clasp that has a small end, like a lobster clasp or like this barrel clasp here. I've tied on a wire guard and I did a pattern of 20 seed beads, one of my 8s, one of my blue crystals, the whole way throughout the piece. When I get to the end, I'm going to repeat basically what I did with the beginning, going through the wire guard, coming down through the wire guard, going through the opposite side of the clasp, which you can untie that if you want to, or unhook it. And then to reinforce, I'm going to go in here. So I'm reaching all over for my pliers here. I'm going to pinch this closed a little bit more. You can totally do this with beading wire too, or beading cable. And I'm going to go back up through the clasp one more time, taking my thread right away, coming out of one side of the wire guard, going back into the opposite side of the wire guard, up and around the wire guard through the clasp at the same time, down through the wire guard on this side. And make sure to pull your thread so you don't see any extra thread in it. From here, I'm going to reinforce, going the whole way back through all of this line of seed beads and crystals, all the way back to the other side, back to my starter end, just taking it through there, and then simply knot off the ends. Once I have that done, you can see that you can use the barrel clasp. Again, lobster clasp works great too. Sometimes that's easier for people. And you have enough space along the back of the pendant to slide through that loop or that jump ring, going through the end here. I just need to grab it the first time through here. You can keep it on, you can wear it independently, and it'll just hang right from the center there. You'll get that nice cathedral at night window. Thanks so much for joining me in this Night at the Cathedral necklace. It is a fun way to utilize a bezel and doing some square crystals. You can drop it, make it as fancy or as casual. You can see I just have it on here with a jean shirt and it really dresses it down, or an evening cocktail dress really will dress it up. Remember, if you need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the description, or you can also subscribe to this month's kit box, subscription box, and get the materials there as well. As always, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads, and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.